Memorial Day weekend, Mick Jagger, Dean Packard, high school principal. What can I say? It's a flagship show. It's 7 p.m. Eastern, and we're here ready. As a lot of us are crossing that finish line, a lot of us are sprinting with our chest out. Hey, we don't stop here at Unlock the Middle. That guy right there, and that other guy, Starcheski, this Mexican can't say that. Him came up with this idea, putting out those tools every Sunday, bringing out the ideas, because now it's no longer 22-23. Now it's 23-24. But it's time to chill a little bit. It's time to relax, gather ourselves. After a couple of weeks, we're going to get back to replay this, rebroadcast it, and pick up all the nuggets of knowledge that are dropped every single last Sunday. Josh Tavat, Prop Principal of Memorial Pathway Academy in Garland ISD, Garland, USA, Texas, ready to rock and roll. So join us on the rebroadcast, like and share it. But if you're live right now, let us know where you're coming from. Put in your 2 cents, whether you're in Alaska or Hawaii, whether you're in Maine or in Florida or anywhere in the 48. We're ready to rock and roll just like Mick Jagger. So let's start me up and let's go, Dean Packard.
I'll tell you what, Josh, great lead in once again. And I love that about you. You're never not on your game. So at the end of the day, listen, happy Sunday night, everybody. And greetings from Massachusetts down to Texas and down to Virginia, where our guest is from right now. So all great things. And as we said before, Sunday nights are all about getting a little bit better together. And that's what we're going to do once again here. Josh, I'm glad you're close to the end of the school year. That's great. We still have 3 weeks left. All state testing is done, but we are in like cruise control right now and just trying to ensure that kids are still getting a great experience. And that's the most important thing, and that they're staying engaged. And that's the other most important thing about everything that we do. So again, how are you, my friend? Great to see you. Anything new?
Fabulous. We had 80 graduates, came up with that speech. I think it went well, seeing those tears of joy. And the day after, the thing about our home is that the day after, I had 3 more graduates. If they would only have hurried up, they would have walked that stage. I'm like, what? Wait, I didn't want to walk. And hey, that's their mentality in this stage of life. And I wanted to wring their neck, like you could have been part of the ceremony. But it doesn't matter. What matters is one thing. What matters is that they met the requirements. They're on to chapter number 2 of their life. And for all of us, that's not a ceremony for the kid. That's a ceremony for that pre-K teacher. That's a ceremony for that Head Start teacher. That's a ceremony for that 8th grade teacher. That's a ceremony for the aunt, grandma. That's a whole collective that united behind that kid. Whether obstacles or no obstacles, graduations are the best moments in every family's life. The school family, the kid's family, the extended family from that kid. And it's a glorious thing to see every single last year. And I'm glad, Dean Packard, that you're about to experience that when you start giving your speech. And I'm ready to cry. I'm ready to cry because you're going to make me cry, Dean Packard, with all the emotional speeches you're going to make.
It's good to hit the core of what you do and the values of what you believe in. And again, you're right, Josh, is all about a journey, and it's all about everybody all encompassing throughout that journey. And in our district right now, we have the kids walk through the elementary schools and middle schools as a tribute to their teachers. And it's a really powerful moment when they come through. And again, it's just that apex, it's that ending. And I say the ending, but it's also a beginning for a new chapter for them. So all depends on how you look at it. So again, never mind about that. Let's shift gears for a second. Let's talk about ed tech, okay? Because we are going to have Debbie Tannenbaum on tonight with us. I'm going to bring her in. Hey, Debbie, nice to have you with us. Thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
It's our pleasure. Don't listen too much to Josh. He's on a tangent tonight. I don't know where he's going with this stuff.
He always has so much energy.
He does have energy. I'm going to give him that much. There's no doubt. Happy Sunday night to you. Hey, listen, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. And we really want to recognize you and your contributions that you bring to the game every single day when you're in your workplace. So talk a little bit, Debbie, about your origins, your journey, your story, about how you got to where you are today, please.
Sure. So this is, I believe, I'm finishing up my 24th year in education. Hey, Bonnie.
Yeah, Bonnie's there. Bonnie's right down the road from me. I love that. Hi, Bonnie.
And so this is my, I guess, 5th year being an elementary school tech coach, which I absolutely love doing because I kind of get the best of both worlds. But before I was an elementary school tech coach, I was an elementary school teacher for a good chunk of my journey. I mostly taught 4th and 5th grade. And in my first year teaching, I discovered back I guess it was like in the late 1990s, scholastic.com for my students. And I started to notice that my students were engaged in a way that I had never seen before. And it just kind of grew where I started to see the promise and how technology could really give my students and get them more engaged, get them more motivated, give them authentic reasons to write, to research, and do all of that. And so back in the early 2000s, I got my master's in tech, and I've been kind of working on it ever since. I joke that I have my tech journey before Twitter and then my tech journey after Twitter. I didn't discover Twitter until 2017, which seems really late in the game for someone who's involved in tech. And when I first encountered it, I didn't really know what to do with it. But Twitter's really changed my life. It's helped me to learn in ways that I could never imagine. And in 2017, I joined Twitter. And at that point, I was an elementary school teacher. My principal introduced me to Twitter. And from there, I started to be able to engage with people from all around the country and the world. And so as a result of that, ended up meeting my publisher and for my book that was published a little over 2 years ago on my birthday. So that was really exciting. It also got me to do some blogging. I've been blogging since February of 2018. And so a lot of opportunities have come up, in those couple of years. And when I became a tech coach 5 years ago, I started to notice there's a lot of stuff about ed tech, but there's not necessarily as much stuff when it comes to our youngest learners. And so that's something I'm extremely passionate about. It's something I talk a lot about, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But I've really spent time in the last couple of years really focusing on how to make sure even our elementary teachers, who a lot of times are put in silos, have ways that they can use technology to connect, and really trying to support that group. I do work with everybody, but that group has a special place in my heart because we live in a world where things are changing so fast. We really need to make sure that our youngest learners are prepared for that. And the way we prepare them for that is not the way that we prepared our kids 10 or 15 years ago.
100 degrees. I agree with you. I mean, you're absolutely correct. And we need to be evolving as the technology is part of their daily lives. So if we're not utilizing it in the educational process, then shame on us. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
There's a special connection that our EdTech team members always bring to the table. Since I was in the classroom, you all bring in that joy. I remember those cows that would roll in, and you would with those blue Apple circular computers, and I would always see walk in, and you guys always have that joy, that fascination, because truly you're building a foundation for us cavemen. I still use my abacus and my yellow pad, and our kids. But you know what? Now we know that kids know this more than us as adults.
Absolutely.
But you know what? All that joy, all that love, all that laughter comes with a fire for you wanting to do this. So my question to you is this, Debbie, a long way to ask you this. Who inspires you like you inspire those kids? Who is your role model?
I have so many role models. I feel like I've been really fortunate to really engage with a lot of really great communities. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Teach Better team. They've been a really big, really great influence in my journey. So many of the things that I do are because of my connections with them. Even me kind of digging, putting my toe into the let's see what else I can do besides just in schools is due to them because of the connections that I made through them. I really admire the team. I really admire how they create this sense of community within education that you don't find everywhere else. So that's definitely somebody who I really admire, or a group of people I really admire. But it's hard for me to just pick one person because there's so many. It was funny because I was applying for something a few weeks ago and they asked me to pick the person who I admired most. And I really went back and forth about who it was. I wrote one person, I wrote another person. I ended up putting Barbara Bray as the person who I admire most because I joke a lot of times that she's the mom that I wish I could have, picked out and chosen for myself. But she's been such a great inspiration for me and really shown that innovation and that connection, bringing people together and, she, on top of so many other people, have helped me to get to where I am now. Because if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would be doing any of these things, I would have thought you were crazy. But because of people like her, I've really been able to, do more than I could ever expect, really dig into that whole idea of I can do things that are challenging. It's okay if things are hard, and I'm going to grow from them. And so, yeah, she's definitely someone, but like I said, there's so many. I think about when I first started and all of the people who did tiny little things to help me. And now it's my goal to try to do the same for others because, we're all better together.
Barbara's a rock star. There's no doubt. We've had her on before with Rita Wirtz, and the two of them together are just a wealth of knowledge. If you don't follow either one of them, please do. I mean, they're that good. So
yeah, she's amazing.
I totally agree with you. Hey, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about student agency and creation with our youngest scholars. How do you do that? You touched upon it a little bit earlier, but you know what? It's a gift to be able to connect with students and foster that engagement. So let's talk about what that looks like from the elementary level.
Well, it's really funny because when I first became a tech coach, and I found out that, at least where I teach in Virginia, technology coaches are part of the master schedule. So we see in some schools, we see everybody. Now I see, I guess, about a third of my school is part of the master. And I remember them showing me the schedule and me seeing that I was going to work with kindergarten and first grade at the end of the day on Thursdays and Fridays. And I had them each for a half an hour. And I remember thinking, oh, I can do this. I've taught kids how to use technology. But looking back, that was in 4th and 5th grade. And it was really hard at first. The kids did not understand what to do. And so they really struggled. And so I have to be honest, I felt like I was playing whack-a-mole, and I talk about this all the time. I couldn't get those heads down fast enough helping them. And it was challenging. And in December of that first year as a tech coach, I was listening to the 10-Minute Teacher podcast, and Vicki Davis was interviewing this woman, Pana Asafatana. And she talked a lot about icon literacy and how she had taught students to use icons to navigate their digital environments. And I started playing around with this because I figured I had nothing to lose. And it was amazing to me, the transformation that started to happen. Once I started teaching my students the icons they needed to navigate those digital learning environments, how they began to develop more agency over them. At first it was me writing a morning message. Now what I do is I have something that I call an EDU Rubicon, which is a rubric on one side with the icons next to it where they're matched together. But really getting my kids to see how that technology could help them learn. Another person I really admire, Greg Bagby, talks about our kids might be digital natives, but they're not digital learners. We make them digital learners. And when he said that, I was like, that's what I've been trying to say all along. And so I've really worked hard with the students I work with I work with pre-K right now, all the way up till 6th, to make sure they build that agency, to make sure that they know when they see that microphone icon, what does it mean? To know what an image icon means, to know how they can use all of those things to share their thinking. And so I've really spent a lot of time with my young learners with that. And we get to the point where it shouldn't be about can they read? It's about do they understand how to navigate that environment? Because we want to show what they know. And giving those young learners the ability to use the tech opens avenues that they wouldn't have with otherwise. I've seen kids using speech to text and using images and using video and audio in ways that are amazing. And you'd be like, oh, they're only in 1st grade. And so it's something I'm really, really passionate about. Like I said, I spend a lot of time talking about it and talking about programs that I feel best meet our littles, because unfortunately, not every program I feel like best meets the needs of our littles. So I really try when I meet with educators to talk about how we have to really make sure for our youngest students that those programs give them choice, that they provide collaboration. Even my kindergartners have learned how to collaborate online. And that it also is that clickability, that easy to use, that with those icons. So I spent a lot of time with this because I feel like a lot of times you go to a session where someone's teaching about littles and they talk about using Go Noodle. My goal when I'm working with my kids is that they should be creating. They're making something. They're creating representations of their learning, and the technology helps them do that. So for me, it's not. I don't encourage my kids to just solely consume, because they get enough of that at other times. I mean, at least in our state, our kids spend time on ST Math and on Lexia, like 30 to 40 minutes a day. They don't need any more consumption time on technology. They need to be creators and problem solvers.
Debbie, what question, something I was thinking about while you were talking, what type of digital skills do most kids come to school with that you're finding? Do you know? And I know this is off track a little bit here.
No, it's fine.
What do you see?
Even my pre-K kids know how to get on YouTube.
Well, what does that tell you right there? That we are way out of bounds if we're not utilizing YouTube as part of their process.
Absolutely. And I see so many times where YouTube is being blocked or parents are saying, I don't want my kids to use YouTube. We have to teach our kids how to navigate these things and give them like scaffolds and, rails, I guess handrails for that. And telling kids they can't do things isn't really going to help our kids in the future. They need to, I even look at the difference between me, my husband and I, and our children are ages 17 to 22. When my kids get something and they have to put it together, they don't look at the instructions. They go to YouTube. And they do a better job than I do, most of the time putting it together. So we have to really think about those things, and we can't be afraid. We have to teach kids how to use these things responsibly.
I love that. Thank you so much, Josh.
You have a great thing coming in with this influx of brand new team members. As there's a huge exodus going out, you have this alternative certification people coming in from industry, from different parts. You have still the challenges of getting that whole college thing of what we came from, the whole college, high school, college educator format. But you have a brand new influx of educators coming in. So how can these brand new team members help out our scholars create these artifacts that you're talking about right now? Using these different thinking routines, the digital tools. That's a broad question I'm asking you. So take it however you feel is appropriate, taking into consideration the lens of someone that has not been in academia, our sense of it, whether it be elementary or middle school. How can they use these tools to make them successful? Picking back off of the comment you just made, they're coming in with YouTube knowledge and the cell phone.
Right. I really think that when we look at our kids, we want to make sure that there's a couple of different things. First of all, I view technology as a way of letting our kids do things that they couldn't do if they were in a purely analog world. So that's the first thing, is thinking about, how do these tech tools that we're using with our kids, how do they help our students learn differently? And a lot of the and if you're a new teacher coming in, and especially if you're a millennial or Gen Z coming in, you've grown up with a lot of that. So that a lot of times those teachers are a little bit more responsive to that. But just, saying, we always start with the learning first, and then we talk about how the tech helps us to better reach that learning. And I think that's really important, because a lot of times people, when they're talking about technology, think that the tech comes first. Whenever I meet with my teachers or we do anything or we're co-teaching, I say, what are the kids, what are those learning objectives the kids need to do? And then once we figured it out, then we talk about the tech tool that's going to help them. And sometimes there isn't a tech tool that helps them, but most times there is. And figuring out, well, how can this tech tool help them to better show their understanding or understand a concept is really, really important. And so, a lot of times people are like, well, I'm bad at tech, but those teachers are the same people who are using their iPhones for everything. They use technology on an everyday basis. They just don't know how to use it to learn. And so I think it's extremely important to have people like me around who can help them bridge that. My goal when I go into a classroom is always to say, let's see another way we can reach our students. And when I come into the classrooms, the kids are excited because they think, oh, we're using tech, it's fun. They don't always realize what they're really getting out of it. And, I see that, and I see the growth. And then the teachers see it, and they're like, well, maybe this isn't so scary. So I think that that's super important as we work with our kids, and also to help teachers understand. Teacher workload has never been higher than it is right now. Teachers can use tech tools to help make their work jobs easier as well. And I think a lot of times teachers are afraid to do that. But knowing that, yes, you can, use ChatGPT to help you with a lesson plan, or you can use, a program to help you get resources. That there are things that you can do that will make your life a little easier, so you have more time to do the things that are more engaging to our students. Because giving kids packets of worksheets is not going to cut it anymore.
Okay.
Not the answer at all. And I'm glad you said that because
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, Josh, did you want to add something?
Yeah. Hey, Debbie, coach me and give me the words to coach a brand new team member who is hesitant. Again, all I'm seeing is alternate certification right now in Texas. I don't know about Massachusetts or Virginia. I'm seeing a large number of them. And they don't come in with the wherewithal of presenting using technology. So, what would you tell that novice educator that might be 35, that might be 28, about the use in part of their pedagogy, the use of technology?
Well, like I said, I would definitely start with what the kids need to learn. When I'm working with a teacher who is not necessarily, who's a little bit more tech resistant, I don't start with the hardest thing. I try to pick the thing that has the biggest bang for the buck, you know. And so, like when I'm working with my littles, there's a program I use a lot called Wixie. Well, Wixie has it has a lot of things that are pre-made, but it also has a lot of power. Our kids can write videos in it. They can do audio. They can do speech to text. They can draw. There's a lot in there that kids can do. And what I start with is, let's start simple. I work with them. We build something together. And then I go in and teach it. The teacher helps me. So it's not the teacher taking that heavy lift. And sometimes the teacher will be like, well, I'm not good at this. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to be. You are in charge of the curriculum that you've been hired to teach. And it's my job to help you pair it with the technology. And when the teacher and I do this together, I find that there's a lot less resistance. Yes, every once in a while, I will have a teacher who will go to try to grade papers or will, fix their classroom libraries. But I'm really clear with teachers that I want them to learn with their kids, and that it's okay to make mistakes. Sometimes I'll be working on something and, the internet won't work, or, something won't happen correctly. And I want them to see that, yes, I'm really comfortable with technology, but that doesn't mean that I never struggle with technology. So I think that that's really important, and showing them that by doing these things with their kids, you're getting to see more of what your students can do. It drives me crazy when I see all these worksheets that are happening. And I feel like after COVID, it was like the return of the big worksheet packets. And teaching is not about giving kids and then grading it. Teaching is about that conversation. It's about that interaction. It's about that connection. And so my goal is, no matter what we're doing, is use the technology so that the teachers can increase their connection, whether they're able to, see what kids are doing who might be too quiet to raise their hands. It shouldn't be about raising hands anymore. Or whether it's, okay, well, I see this kid still has need because these other kids are working. I can pull this kid in these couple of kids in a small group and really meet what they need. That's what's really important. And so when it comes to teachers, I try to start small and then we build up. My goal is not for the teachers to collect 10,000 tech tools, but give them a tech tool or two that they can really build and get comfortable with. And then I find a lot of times word of mouth brings the rest of them along. And as they see, oh, wait, my teammate can do this. Well, maybe I can do this too. And being new to my school this year, I definitely, in my second grade team is a great example. All of a sudden, they went from not using a whole lot of technology tools to using more because they saw the impact and they saw the engagement. And then I'm walking through the halls and they're like, did you see we used Wixie this week? Or did you see we used this? And they have excitement, so their kids have more excitement.
I love that. You know what? Sean Moriarty just threw this out here. Sean, great to have you here with us again tonight. Technological fluency is becoming a basic skill set.
Yeah.
You know what? And he's absolutely right. And it doesn't matter what grade level. So again, we're using those tools to connect students to their learning. And I always remember that. And that leads me into my question with universal design for learning. Our school took a big initiative this year, and we're training that as our main PD. And I'll tell you what you're doing is removing barriers so all students can access their learning, whether it's a tech tool, whether it's a different modality of teaching in some capacity, it doesn't matter. Good UDL foundations help all students be successful. So let's talk about, how do you enlist student voice using UDL and tech tools together?
So one of the things that I got a chance to do this past year I guess, year and a half is that I recently became ISTE certified. I don't know if you know what that is. It's the International Society of Technology for Education. They have a certification program, which is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I almost gave up 2 or 3 times. But I didn't, and I got it. And one of the things that really struck me is that as I was learning the ISTE standards for students and for educators, how much universal design for learning was present. And when I first became a teacher, we talked a lot about universal design for learning, but then it kind of took a backseat, which is to me kind of ironic in where I had been, because universal design for learning is not a fad thing. It's really just great teaching. And so as we started doing that, I started looking at the tech tools that I'm using and seeing how they really could provide that universal design for learning. And like I said earlier, this year I'm at a school where 25% of our students are multilingual learners. And so making sure that I gave my students the ways to access what we were learning and to share their learning in multiple ways became even more important for me and for my students and for the teachers that I was working with. And so really looking at how those tech tools can provide students opportunities to really engage more, to really get involved in that learning, I think is super important. Looking at ways that we can have students change the way they access the text or change how they access information is really important. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, giving them different ways to share their learning. So often, and I remember being a teacher and I gave all the kids either the diorama or the book report, and you have to read 26, 28 of them. And by the end, you're like, oh, there's nothing engaging about doing that. But looking at that differently, and in one of my last years in the classroom, I was introduced to Flipgrid, now Flip, and I started giving my kids things like choice boards where they could pick 3 activities to show their mastery. And watching how in a class of 26 kids, 24 of them picked the one that had the video in it. And then I got to see their homes and I got to see them sharing in their authentic in their environments. And I was really able to focus on it. And it wasn't, oh, everyone's the same, but really getting to see that. And I think that that's one of the things that we want our students to be creator, like Sean's talking about. Well, when we talk about those future ready skills, they have to be able to communicate. They have to be able to collaborate. They have to be critical thinkers. And, when we want all those things happening with our kids, we have to start that early. And, so when I think about universal design for learning, I think about, well, what are the options I'm giving my kids to share their learning? Am I just saying everybody has to make this same project? Or am I saying you can pick from, a choice board of projects? Or am I saying, well, here's the criteria. You show me how you want to learn that as they get older. My goal is to build up their tech toolbox. So by the time they get to secondary school, they have so many different ways of sharing their learning. And, by doing that, we're giving our kids voice and choice in their work. And we're not expecting it to be a cookie cutter thing. We're saying to our students that they matter. When we say to kids, everybody has to do the same thing, then we're saying that they're all the same and our students aren't the same. And we shouldn't be treating them like they're all the same. And so it's so important, if I know a student is really a great artist, well, I want them to use their artistic abilities in how they share their learning. If I have a kid who's, really good at doing performing, I want them to use that, and so really thinking about that and giving them, choices in what they can do and also who they can learn about. One of the things that my 4th graders are doing right now is they're making escape rooms. Well, I told them, I was like, I want you to pick people who you haven't learned about before to make your escape rooms. Don't pick somebody you've already read about. Pick somebody who you might have never heard of that you want to learn about. And all of a sudden I'm seeing things like, oh, that person, she's from my country and I get to read and learn about her for school. And I'm like, of course you do. That's the way it should be.
Nice. Awesome. I'm writing that one down right now.
There was so much right there, Josh.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
You were talking and I started writing and go, oh, I'm up right now. Hey, I'll get back to that, or I'll rewind and I'll share.
Rewind and replay.
Exactly. Hey, Deb, real quick, talk to us about the campus as a PLC. You know how Solution Tree says we are a PLC, the whole campus. How can we promote that? Promote the creation, the concept of creation over consumption. using different tech tools?
I think that it really has to be something that's modeled from the top down. One of the things I'm really fortunate, I'm in an amazing school this year where we really have a lot of shared leadership. And, I'm part of an instructional council. We meet once a month to really make sure that we're framing things. I'm part of a resource team. We meet once a week to really make sure that we're keeping our eyes on the goals of our school and of our district. And that way we can make sure that we're providing professional learning for our teachers that reflects those priorities and really makes sure that our teachers are getting, that we're providing that double track agenda. We're showing them things, but we're also showing them things on, and we're also giving them models on how they can take things back. And we've been really doing a good job this past year of trying to provide some choice in our PD so our teachers know that it's not just about what we do with our students, but it's also about what we want them to have. And so that's been extremely important as we've been working, and teachers were given the opportunity to come up with their own professional learning plans. And then we were able to create professional development that met their needs from there. And I think that's really important. We have to model what we want our students to do. Expecting everybody to sit in a meeting for 3-4 hours where everybody does things exactly the same is not going to work. We need to get that choice. And especially with our specialists in our school, they've really appreciated that because they were like, so many times the things they've learned about had nothing to do with them. Well, we want to make sure we create things that meet the needs of our staff, just like we create things that meet the needs of our students. And so I think that we have, we have our weekly meetings, and we really work, just take that ownership from just being coach based at our school to start building it so that our teachers can start to really lead that learning, that it's not just about 3 or 4 people leading all the learning, but that we're building that knowledge so that everybody has it going down. Not necessarily going down, but going throughout the school.
I love that you made reference to the fact that if we're going to UDL it for students, let's UDL it for our staff as well.
We
And
have
through
to.
that UDL pathway, guess what? They pick up the tools they need to be successful. So that to me, it's a system that makes sense. So I'm glad you said that. Hey, so I've been thinking, math is one of the Achilles heels for a lot of districts. It's a foreign language. Kids either get that abstract thinking or they don't, or they struggle. And, let's talk about for a second what it looks like to use tech tools to activate math knowledge. What do you have in mind?
So this is one of the other things I really love. I found that I couldn't get teachers to let me into their classrooms when it came to reading. Sometimes they would let me in for social studies, but math for some reason was one of those places where they were like, sure, come in. Because I feel like a lot of times our teachers get overwhelmed by math. And so one of the things that I learned, especially last year, was that there were certain things that I could do with my students in math that would really help them to better understand the math in a new way. I could find math tools that would help them better visualize what they were learning. I could give them access so that they could share their learning with multimodal thinking. So it wasn't just one way, that, bringing in that UDL. And then I noticed that the more interaction I gave my students, the better. And as I've continued to build my toolbox with my learners, we need to give our students more time to build that math discourse. And we don't do that. A lot of times we think if we say to kids, turn and talk, they've done math discourse. Well, there's more that they can do than that. And so I started exploring programs that would help me do that. And over the past 2 years, found a couple of programs that are free, that my teachers have really come to love. One of those is Paradex Flashcard Factory. It's the stupidest name for a program, but it allows our kids to create collaborative flashcards where one student draws something and another student has to write. Well, it's perfect for math. One of my students might be solving a word problem with drawing, and the other one might be writing the equation. I have with my older kids, maybe I give them a problem. One kid writes that word problem. Every state and every curriculum has that, creates simple and multi-step word problems involving ... And the kids sit together and they work together and they make these cards and they fall magically in the front of the room on a conveyor belt. And then we get to have conversations about whether or not they've met the standards, whether they've met what's expected. It always amazes me, especially with my kindergartners and first graders, the first time I do this and I get to watch their little heads next to each other and the excitement as, one, they create their card, and 2, as it magically falls down, and they all, at least my first and kindergartners, want to run up to the screen because it's like, it's real. But watching them get that chance to talk with each other and really do that, and it partners them randomly. So it's also a good exercise. And sometimes when you collaborate with someone and you work with somebody, it's not somebody you always choose. Sometimes we have to learn to work with different people. And so that's one of the things. It's a free thing. It's really that I really enjoy doing. But over the last year, the biggest thing I've encountered that I love is Desmos. I don't know if you guys are using Desmos in your schools, but Desmos is free. And Desmos is usually billed as something that you use in middle and high school. And about 2.5 years ago, I went to a conference in Georgia and went to a Desmos session. And I walked in and I said, "Can I use any of this? I'm elementary." And she goes, "I think you can." Well, it turns out that there's a huge there's so many things that people using Desmos have made that are in the elementary level. Plus, people like me are starting to make our own things as well. And the thing that I love about it is it gives our students the chance to interact with each other. They get to see each other's comments. They get to see each other's answers, whether you make it anonymous or not. They're able to use different math tools. They have this thing called the polypad, which is basically any manipulative you could ever think of available. It really allows our students to learn in different ways. You're able to use graphs to help kids learn. My third graders were learning about fractions. Well, they have graphs that were created where the kids can actually manipulate it, so they can see thirds versus fourths, and they can compare those things that aren't always easy to do drawing. And so it's really been great for my students to be able to see that there's a different way that they can learn. And talking about icons from before, I was in a third grade class and one of my students starts talking in the middle of the lesson. And at that point we were working individually. I go, "What are you doing?" And she looks at me and she goes, "There's a microphone there. I can talk into this." And so things like, and so students seeing that they can talk into the program to share their thinking, that the program can read to them. Those things are really important. And with Desmos, if you get higher up into it, you can even code it so they'll give your students specific feedback. And that's what I started to dig into. But it's a free program. And, now they're owned by Amplify. But there's so many things that are out there. It's been really amazing. And the kids absolutely love it. They have all of those classroom activities. Plus they have this thing called a polygraph where it's basically a guess who for math. And so students have a board of 16 pictures. One student picks a picture and then the other student has to ask yes or no questions to figure out what it is. What a great way to use math vocabulary. So things like that have been really, really important to me. I've also been using Flip a lot with my kids because we want to give our students tools that emulate the things they're seeing. We live in a generation where our kids are on TikTok a lot. Some of them, I guess, are still on Instagram. They're using things that are video based. So we have to give them experiences where they get to practice, where they get to use those types of skills in school as well, because that's where the engagement comes in.
As a connoisseur of podcasts, both audio and visual, I always hear people give programs or ideas. It was Desmos, and what was the next one?
The first one was a Flip.
Flip? No, the original one about the card.
Oh, Pear Deck's Flashcard Factory.
Pear Deck's Splash Deck Factory.
Flashcard
Factory. All right.
And it is 100% free. It is a free part of Pear Deck. And whenever I talk to my friends at Pear Deck, I'm like, I don't understand why you don't publicize it more, because it's one of my favorite tools to use. And whenever I use it, the engagement with my students is crazy. And in fact, there's times where I'll go into my second grade classes and they'll be like, "Are we playing the Flashcard Factory game?" And I'll be like, "Not today." They're like, "Why not?"
And so, you know what? Keep on dropping those ideas. And I think that you all put them together in your book. Talk to us about you have a copy of the book there so you can show it?
Of course I do.
There you go. Check it out right there. Talk to us about the book.
So the book is called Transform Techie Notes to Make Learning Sticky. And in a lot of ways, it's my journey as an educator. As most great educators, transform is an acronym where every chapter has a different meaning. Letter has a different meaning. So it starts talking about how I had to turn away from closed doors. When I started teaching in the late 1990s, it wasn't common to do a lot of team planning together. And so it talks about how I was in my first couple of places I taught. I had a lot of fear when I first started teaching. I was afraid of getting in trouble. It's funny because I feel like now as a more veteran educator, I embrace my vulnerability, but as a starting teacher, I didn't. And so it talks a lot about the ideas of, turning away from having those doors closed to really, those start of things like, PLCs and things like that as we were working. So that first chapter is kind of like my backstory. It's kind of my origin story. And then I talk about revisiting how technology is used in education. I really focus in that next part about how we want to make sure that we use technology to do things we can't do without technology, that we want to pick tech tools that can be used with multiple ages and in multiple subjects. We shouldn't be picking and yet I do present on math, but even the things I present on math can be used outside of math. That we want to make sure that we have tech tools that are really versatile and that really do something that give our kids experiences that they haven't had. Then as I get further in, I talk a little bit more about amplifying creation. One of the things that I'm also really excited about is I do a lot of talking about thinking routines from Project Zero. And with Project Zero, it talks about how, all of our ideas are a function of thinking. And so if we want our kids to learn better, we have to really help them get their thoughts out. And so I talk about how I use thinking routines with my students to really scaffold that thinking, and how it helps them to create artifacts of their learning as well. And really focusing on what is creation. A lot of times I feel like a lot of us have a really narrow view of what creation is. We feel like if we're creating something, it's a big, long process. Sometimes creations can be spurts. They can be, they don't have to be sprints. They don't have to be long things. Our goal is that you're taking something from one place and turning it into something else. You're making your own understandings of it. Then the book talks about that nurturing student agency piece as we get to N. And really focusing on how we can get our kids, it talks about the whack-a-mole and how I started to get my students to be more independent with their technology. And then the last part of the second half of the book really focuses on teachers. I was a teacher who had not used social media, like I said, till 2017. And when I started to do it, it changed my life. I thought it was dumb. I thought only celebrities used it and politicians, but I was wrong. And it talks about seeking connections outside of your school. I have met so many amazing people. I mean, even this is a great example of this. I would have never met the two of you if it hadn't been for this. I think about all the conferences I've gone to where I've run into somebody who I've met online and we've hugged like we've known for each other forever. So seeking those connections, really making sure that you're finding your PLN and give suggestions on how to do so. And really, then it talks about offering your voice. For a long time, I was a lurker. I didn't do anything. Then I started to put my voice out there. I was afraid that I didn't know what people were going to do with that. I've been blogging for, at this point, over almost 6 years. I'm so glad that I did those things, because when you put your voice out there, then you become part of that conversation. And I've learned so much from others sharing my voice and from that exchange. And then it kind of ends up talking about reaching beyond your expectations, which is the R. I started doing things if you had asked me 6 years ago, I would have never thought I was going to be presenting, or doing all the traveling I'm doing. I'm looking at my summer schedule and I'm like, I think, and just for, I broke my foot a couple weeks ago, so I'm still not totally mobile. But I'm excited about being able to do that and share the things I'm passionate about and learn from others. Every time I go to a conference, not only am I able to share what I'm passionate about, but I'm also able to learn so much from others. The escape room idea I shared earlier, I learned that at a conference I went to this year. Somebody was sharing how they were having their kids make escape rooms in Google Forms. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And I started to use it as well. So, sometimes it's amazing the things you can find. And then the book finishes up talking about how to maximize learning with tech. So it's funny because, now it's 2 years old, but there's so much of it that still rings true. But like I said, I blog a ton. So there's always new content coming out of my blog. This year, I've been doing something called the ABCs of Transforming Learning. And next Sunday, my T blog post will come out. So I'm almost done the alphabet.
Debbie, you from a leadership standpoint, I've been in leadership for, over 20 years. you're empowering people. I want you to stop and think about that for a second. The way that you present this and the way that you shine as you say it, you get what your role is in here. You're being a servant leader in regards to helping these people understand the tools that'll make them better. And I can see you have so much fun doing that. And
Yeah.
the greatest leaders I know empower the heck out of people around them to let them do their job and to give them the tools to be more efficient. So kudos, hats off to you.
Thank
We're
you.
talking about things like student voice, student agency. We're talking about all the things that help make learning fun and right for kids. How can you go wrong? These are the greatest. We talk about technology. You don't have to fear it. And I'm going to ask you a quick question. How do you get that naysayer who doesn't want to utilize technology to try it? What's the first step? And this is a question off the course, so to speak. But how do you get them to try?
Well, there's two ways I found that have been most effective. One is to show them the impact it has with their students. So, like if I get to come in and do co-teach with a teacher to show them the engagement their kids have. But sometimes I'll have a teacher who won't invite me in, and I do some work as part of the master schedule. And sometimes the kids are my best advocates. The kids will say, "We're doing this with Miss Tannenbaum, and it's so much fun. And why can't we do this in here?" And so sometimes there's a little bit of persuasion on that. Some of the I always joke that like I'll be waiting outside of one of the classrooms to do a co-teaching lesson, and the other kids will go, "Well, when's our turn?"
Exactly.
So kid pressure is also a good thing too.
You make teaching fun? Are you crazy? What a concept that is.
Well, I always used to tell the kids when I was a teacher, I'm like, if I'm not having fun doing this, then I'm not in the right place. Like I did not pick a job so that I could be not having fun. Like I love what I do, and there are times I don't love it as much. We also have a very long testing season as well. But during testing, I know that I'm still those relationships that I'm building during those testing I'll be able to, work on those later.
Debbie, isn't there fun in doing worksheets? I'm trying to find a student that said a worksheet is a real fun opportunity for me to. I'm kidding out there. Teachers, don't listen to that and don't try this at home, kids. No, break away.
Yeah, leave those poor copy machines alone. They're tired.
Bingo. There you go, right there. Hey, Josh, what do you think of all this tonight, man? This has been a great session with Debbie.
As Marcia Tate states, dittos don't create dendrites. So we'll just leave it there, all right? Hey, you know what? It's great stuff right now going on. A shout out there to Principal Cafele, who's being here with us since from Mexico, and also a great shout out to Barbara Bray. I agree with you; she's an inspiration to me.
She's awesome.
She had me on her podcast and interviewed, and the way she's so methodical on those podcasts and the way she creates those forms. That's a role model, and it doesn't matter about the time or anything. That those are the people that we admire, our PLNs, that make us a better version of ourselves. Just like Dean always talks about that. But this is an awesome event. But you know what? Hey, Dean,
yes,
we're not done.
We're not done.
We're not done. You know why we're not done on Thursday, Dean? What do we have on Thursday, Dean Packer?
Thursday. What do you think Thursday is? What is that again? Is that Inside the Red Zone?
The Red Zone, Dean. And this coming Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, roundtable number 5 from the superintendents. 5 superintendents from Ohio, New Jersey, Texas, and California will be joining us here at Unlock the Middle's Red Zone. The baby of that dude over there, making sure that we're looking at things as we finish off the school year and starting 23-24. So we're ready to rock and roll. Thanks to Debbie, thanks to the superintendents, and thanks to that high school principal over there who's ready.
To a theater near you. Coming soon to a theater near you. Hey, listen, quick shout out to Moe B, Principal Caffelli, who's in the house tonight. We also had Coach Central was in, Sean Moriarty, Bonnie Nieves. I mean, I'd love to have you guys here. It makes our show so much more fun and actually more engaging. So thank you so much for your insight. And Debbie, thanks so much for sharing your tools. I'll tell you what, I'm leaving with just a little more thought process in the back of my head. Even as an old dog, you're going to teach them new tricks. So thank you so much. Last thing you want to say, Debbie, what do you want to say to all the techies out there? What do you want to say to them?
Well, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for having me, and just don't be afraid to try something new. It doesn't mean you have to try everything new. Pick one thing that you're doing that you feel like you could do a tiny bit differently experiment with that. Don't experiment with your best activity that you love, that you've been doing, and you're like, I'm not changing that. Pick one thing that you're struggling with and see if there's a tech tool that can help you with that. Don't make it difficult. Change the plate around. Don't totally get a new plate.
There you go. And Debbie, one other thing, where can everybody get your book? Where can they find your book?
My book is available on Amazon, and I'm also on my website. And then I also have a book I contributed to, Amplifying Instructional Design, where I wrote a whole chapter on engagement.
Awesome. Do us a favor. Send us a snapshot photo of that so we can get that out to everybody too with this podcast. Okay. I want to make sure everybody has access to it. All right, Debbie. Thank you so much on behalf of. What? What I forget, Josh?
As a former Marine,
yes,
I would like to say the purpose for this weekend.
Thank you.
Is Memorial Day.
That's right.
For all those people that gave us their child, their husband, their cousin, their niece, nephew, and never came back to have dinner with us. Thank you very much.
Agreed.
Muchas gracias. From this immigrant who became a citizen to give back to his country, I want to thank everybody out there supporting me on my journey. That's why I thought it was great to give back to my beautiful country that gave me everything that I have right now. So for all those family members out there that have an empty chair today, muchas gracias. Thank you for what you did. And thank you to your child, insert whatever title it is, for the ultimate price that they paid. Happy Memorial Day. Let's not forget the reason why you're having that burger.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you saying that. And that is spot on. I'm glad you did that as well.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we're going to round it up right now. Again, thank you so much, Debbie. Appreciate you being with us. Debbie Tannenbaum from the tech perspective tonight, Josh Tovar and Dean Packard. We want to say, have a great week. Don't forget, kids deserve the best version of you possible. Please hold on, everybody.